Hello out there, all you wonderful people. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy. Thank you once again for lending me your time and your ear listening into another Gamer's Thoughts discussion. And there are going to be several subjects that I talk about today. Mostly because I was going to do individual discussions on each of these things, but I didn't really get around to it. So I'm just going to combine it all into one full-length discussion. So we're going to be talking about Nintendo going after certain things on GitHub. We're going to be talking about Tears of the Kingdom reviews. We're going to be talking about people's reaction on social media to those reviews. And then we're also going to be talking about David Jaffe and another one of his takes. So, let's get started. So the whole Nintendo GitHub situation, and people are going to be like, well, you're just bootlicking or whatever. I'm not bootlicking, because bootlicking would be like, oh, Nintendo is completely right 100% all of the time. No. This situation, I don't even like the choice that they're making. I don't agree with it. But I do understand the choice they're making. I don't know. I did look it up, but now I'm like drawing a blank because I'm not looking at it right this second. But everybody knows by now that Nintendo's put out basically a cease and desist, and they're sending their lawyers after a particular person on GitHub for sharing tools that allow people to get the game key for their games to be able to play them on an emulator. Now, I don't have a problem with that personally, because I don't see that as doing any harm. The problem doesn't come from people taking their own keys and then using their keys to play those games on an emulator on their PC. That's not the problem. The problem is the sharing of the keys, which this is the source that the keys are created from. If you stop the source, the keys can't be made to be shared. That's what they're hitting at. They can try to go after every individual who's sharing keys, but that would be kind of useless, and it would be like basically throwing a rock into a void. It's not going to accomplish much. But if they go after the source of the creation of the keys, that's how they stop it. At least that's what logically makes sense. Now, if I was in their position as a business, and I was looking at this and was like, this is potential sales being lost because people are now taking these keys and then sharing them, and the people that they're being shared to are going to go ahead and play the game for free without making any sort of payment. There's no way to quantify exactly how many people that is, at least not as far as I know, unless Nintendo has some sort of way to tap the amount of times a particular key has been used, which they might. But again, I don't know for sure, and I'm not going to pretend I do. But if I were looking at it from that angle, and this is potential sales and revenue lost, yeah, I would take that type of approach towards putting a stop to it. Who's to say that they even agree with the choice that they have to make? I mean, besides the shareholders. Shareholders are happy-go-lucky behind this. They're like, yes, that means more money for us. But I don't even know if the actual software development teams behind Nintendo would agree with this. I mean, outside of, hey, this is potentially hurting our pay, somebody playing a game that they purchased for the Switch on an emulator, as long as they actually purchase the game, is not hurting anyone. Problem comes from people who don't purchase the game. And somebody made a point on Twitter, if I can find it and remember it by the time this goes up on YouTube and Facebook, somebody made a post on Twitter like, People aren't buying, or something along the lines, people aren't buying the games to get the keys. Like, obviously, dumbass. Nobody said they were. But this is where the keys are being made. This is where the code is being taken from. So you go after where the problem starts, not where the problem ends. Again, they probably would have left this alone had the codes not been being shared online to multiple platforms for people to go ahead and just, hey, I'm just gonna go ahead and download this and stick it in an emulator and play it. If people say, well, Nintendo's going after emulation, no, they're not. Because if Nintendo's going after emulation, that means everything on Nintendo Switch Online couldn't exist. They literally couldn't do it if they were going after emulation. They're not going after emulation. They're going after the source that's allowing their games to be provided to people for free that they haven't provided to people for free. That's what's happening. Now, again, I don't even agree with this choice. But I understand the choice. I know where it's coming from. I know the angle that makes sense. Now, you could be mad about it. That's perfectly fine. That's totally understandable. But if you're mad about it because it's more, well, we gotta stick it to Nintendo because we don't want to pay for their games. Why don't you want to pay for the games if you want to play them so bad? Well, I don't want to have to buy it on inferior hardware. Well, you can buy it and not play it. I mean, you not buy it and not play it. You can buy it and not have the Switch. You can still support the development and not have the Switch. But there's not people doing that. Let's be honest. People going ahead, taking those keys and then grabbing the damn emulator and just running with it. They don't care. So, if they don't care, why should Nintendo care? Think about that. You don't care if the company gets their money, so why should the company care if you find a way to fucking get this stuff for free when you're not supposed to? Well, why should they care that you are able to, or that you're not able to, if you're not supposed to? I mean, again, this is more of a business thing than anything else. Well, Nintendo's a greedy corporation. Every fucking company that's attempting to make money is greedy in one way, shape, or form. If you try to stick that to one particular company, you will quickly learn that everyone else is the same way. That's why EA has the horrendous business practices that they have. So, just saying, you will find many companies are greedy as hell. And it is easier for smaller indie developers to be a little bit more lenient because they're not going to be hit as hard, or they're not as likely to be hit, to be honest, because their products cost less money. So they are not as likely to be hit as hard by something like this. That still doesn't excuse it either way. So, we'll move on from that. And the other two things are basically just one subject. And that is that Tears of the Kingdom has received a lot of high reviews. And it's going to tie into another thing that I meant to mention at the beginning. I meant to talk about the performance thing. But it's all going to be one thing. So Tears of the Kingdom comes out to wide praise, reviews, and obviously there were the outliers who intentionally made low-scoring reviews to get attention for unknown platforms trying to build themselves up. You know, cool, do what you got to do. I understand. People are getting upset that this game has a lot of high praise and reviews. It's a highly polished game. And I gotta say this. A game can be highly polished and not have the type of performance in it that everyone wants it to have. I know someone's going to say that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Actually, it does, depending on how the game was developed. People are complaining that Tears of the Kingdom was built around 30 frames per second being, well, that the game runs 30 frames per second. Somebody even claimed it just runs at 20. Yes, there are dips down to 20 frames per second, but the game generally consistently runs at 30. Okay? That's not a major problem because people understand that the Switch is not a PS5 and is not an Xbox Series S or X. It is not a stationary home platform that has power constantly pumped into it all of the time. It's something that you take on the go, thusly utilizing a battery, which means that it cannot be run at 1080-60 on a consistent basis. They probably could have made the game run at 1080-60 if they wanted to, but on the go, that means 720-60, and that would probably burn your battery out. Potentially. But, I mean, either way, the game's still highly well made for its lower resolution. Like, that's not the big problem. Problem is that people are expecting, for some reason, this handheld device to perform like a stationary console. It's not going to happen. Yes, you can play it as a home console, but it's still not going to perform the same way as a home console. Not without some changes to how it is designed. Which would mean, one, you can't have it be a portable platform. I don't know why we keep having to go around this one particular thing constantly. And that's the thing that upsets people, that the game is getting high praise. Oh, it's running at 720p and between 20 and 30 frames per second. How can this be a game rated 10 out of 10? Did you ever think that maybe there's more to how a game is designed versus its perceived performance? Like, you know, how engaging the game is, how fun it feels to play, how well developed the world is, how interesting there are multiple facets to game design. You can't just say, okay, well, we got a game running at 1080p, 60 frames per second, or 4K 30 frames per second, which is 2160p. You can't expect that that's going to be the thing that wins you the day. And hell, the consoles that touted this aren't even doing that. Well, 4K 60 is what they touted. They're barely doing 4K 30 at times. That's not even consistent. Switch never promised any sort of specific level of performance. Nintendo never does. At least as far as I've seen, they have never promised any sort of specified performance. When they build their games around what they think will work for the console without taxing it too heavily. Which, honestly, more game designers should do. But because they don't necessarily program specifically for a platform, or have teams anymore that specifically program for a platform, it becomes an issue. So, that's that little tidbit aside. If you're going to be agitated that a game gets high praise because it doesn't run to the particular standards you wish it ran at, that's a personal issue. That has nothing to do with the game being a quality game. Because if that's the case, then a crap ton of indie games that are coming out now shouldn't see the light of day if we're going to do that. And that would kill a whole scene. That would damn well kill a whole scene. Just because you have a perceived desire for a specified metric, which was never promised, doesn't make something bad. That is what you perceive that it should be versus what it actually is. Those are two different things. Those are two different things. Let me repeat it one more time. Those are two different things. There's nothing wrong with you particularly wanting a particular metric of performance from a platform or game, but it also comes with you wanting it under the understanding that certain things will not be the way that you think they should be. Now, again, I know when I say this isn't going out to the vast majority of people, because the vast majority of people don't really care. This is something that is to a specified few that look for nitpicky things to be arguing about. Like, if we're being honest, I can find nitpicky things to argue about for every platform all day, every day, and that would just end up killing my enjoyment of video games. Hell, right now, I am playing back through Knights of the Old Republic 2. Because, I originally played it on Xbox. I have it on PC. I've started up several times, but not really been able to focus on it. Now I have it on my Switch, and I can play it while I'm busy doing other things or moving around, which means I can go through the game again. That game has horrendous bugs in it. Multiple bugs and glitches that screw up things. It's crashed on me several times. And that's just the game, because I remember it doing that on the OG Xbox when I had it too. It would crash, install the system, and I had to restart it. I didn't run into that issue on PC, but then again, I also didn't get very far on it on PC when I was attempting to play it. I also had to restore content mod on PC though, so that's a whole separate beast. But the base game has a lot of issues. There's a lot of bugs because it was a rushed project. So, I'm actually able to go back through that game and find out interesting stuff I never knew was in it, because part of the bugs that are in it caused some things to never happen, and I didn't realize that the first time I played through it. If I had known that, I would have gone back through it when I had that time to actually play it, but I never did. I actually still have that copy, the Xbox copy too. But I'm getting sidetracked from my point. The game is riddled with bugs. There's no two ways about it. But it's still a really good game. I can deal with the particular frustrations of some of the bugs that don't often happen, because I can look past those issues, and those are bigger issues than what happens with Tears of the Kingdom. But I can look past those issues and actually see the good game behind it. And I know that Asper, whatever their name is, they did a decent job porting the game. I wish that they would have been able to have time to go in and clean up some of that code and fix some of the issues, but they still did a good job porting the game. It's still the same game with some minor fixes here and there. I wish that they would have had more time to actually go through it and actually fix it. But they didn't. And that might have just been because they weren't commissioned to do so. Either way, still a good game. Knights of the Old Republic 2 is still a good game. And then the game got bashed horribly because... I wouldn't even say horribly. It got bashed because of the bugs. But the game is good if you actually get into it. That said, some minor performance issues for Tears of the Kingdom, I could let that go. Especially when the game wasn't designed to be running on a high-end device. It wasn't. It was designed to be played on literally a tablet. That's what it was designed to do. So again, I'm not going to be mad or upset that maybe there's a few dips here and there as far as like the frame rate goes, and that it's not at the highest of resolutions. Like that matter. That doesn't even matter to me. And if we're being honest, a lot of people that love Ocarina of Time, especially if you've played the N64 version of Ocarina of Time, you have no reason to bitch. Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask, you have no reason whatsoever to sit here and bitch about this. Not at all. Because those games run at, I think, 18 frames per second. I think Majora's Mask might get to 20 on a good day. There's somewhere between 15 and 20 frames. That doesn't make either of those games bad. They still play very well. They're still fun to get into. So I'm not going to sit here and cast shade over them and be mad about it. No. The games were designed the way they were for the platforms that they're on. Simple as that. So if that upsets you, don't buy the game. But let's not go back to, let's go and not pirate the game then. If you really are that upset about it, don't go pirating it. Because when you put it on an emulator and you boost it to 60 frames per second, you throw off the timing mechanism in the game. That's what happened with Breath of the Wild. I doubt it's any different with Tears of the Kingdom, seeing that it uses the same engine and uses the same timings. Just don't do it. You're going to cause yourself a lot of frustration, and you probably will cause that game to crash a bunch of times on you. Until someone goes in and edits the code to try to fix it. But even then, it's still not going to be a perfect fix. Now, let's move over to Mr. David Jaffe. So, he started off praising the game, saying it was great and everything, it was fun and all that, but then had to throw in this knock about visual fidelity of the game. Okay, David. Alright, Mr. Jaffe. Now, didn't you worked on God of War, correct? I don't believe from God of War 1 to 2 there were drastic differences in how those games looked. And I've played the whole series up to about where 4 is, because I have to get 4 and not 4. But the more recent God of War and Ragnarok, I have to get those. I haven't played them yet. I played every other God of War game because I sat with my wife and played through all of them, because she likes the series herself and she wanted to see the endings to them. So I played through every one of those. The only one well, it was 2 of them that had, I want to say it was Chains of Olympus and God of War 3, were the ones that had major improvements to visual quality because they were on a different platform. They were made for a different platform. Hell, even with the God of War collection, the complete collection that's on the PS3, you still get the PS2 visuals for God of War and God of War 2. And for the PSP games, you get the PSP level visuals for God of War. So, and God of War on PS2 is the first game made. Every game after that doesn't necessarily have better visual fidelity. And so it was like, well, a couple of them were PSP games. Well, hey, I'm just going by what his argument was. I'm going by the argument he made. I understand the logic. Trust me. But I'm going by the argument he made. So then those games should have never been on PSP, correct? They should have either been on PS2 or PS3. And either way, they should have been much better looking games than what PS2 God of War was. The original. If we're going to go with that argument. And you can't tell me that they didn't reuse assets from the first God of War and the God of War 2. We know for a fact that they did. Yeah, they made some new ones, but they still reused a lot of stuff from the first game in the development of the second. Which I have no problem with. I'm just saying that was logically inconsistent to say when you look at your track record for game development. Plus, this is also the same person who, for some reason, didn't know how Metroid worked, but talked massive shit. And had trouble with the easiest 2D Metroid made to date. Dread is literally the easiest one. I'm not even gonna lie, I'm not bullshitting you, it is the easiest one. Everything is laid out for you, it is self-explanatory, it tells you where everything is. All you have to do is look. My first completion of that game was at 90%. This is the only Metroid I have ever completed at 90% of the collectibles found. On my first go with no strategy guide. That is the easiest Metroid because they give you so much shit to be able to take on the enemies in the game. It is the easiest one. A couple of the boss fights are a little bit, a little bit hard. But that's because you don't know how to take care of them. Once you know how to handle them, you figure out the patterns, that shit is easy. So I'm just saying, like, this man didn't know how to get through Metroid Dread. Which, again, self-explanatory. Everything's laid out for you. And I'm largely thinking Tears of the Kingdom is the same way. A lot of stuff is laid out for you. You just have to figure out how to use it. Now, I can't confirm that just yet myself. But I'm starting to think that it's largely the same because Nintendo's been doing a lot more handholdy stuff with their games when they've been developing them. As before, they didn't really, they just threw you in the world and say, go. Now it's like, hey, look, you see that thing over there? Go check that out. Oh, you want to explore over here? But yeah, check that out. That might be interesting. They highlight things for you. Yeah, and I know I went off on a tangent that I didn't need to. But back to the whole thing about the visual fidelity of the game. It's using the same engine. The style looks good. And honestly, years from now, when people are saying that the PS5 and Xbox Series X graphics are horrible, they look bad for the realistic games, this game's still going to look and feel fresh. It's still going to look and feel fresh. Go look back at Wind Waker for GameCube. Even though Wind Waker HD came out, Wind Waker for GameCube still looks good to this day. I'll say Wind Waker HD looks better, but Wind Waker on GameCube still looks good. It doesn't look like horribly aged, and that's because of how it was designed, how it was made to look. Now contrast that to Twilight Princess, for example, which was a more realistic looking Zelda. Visually, that game doesn't look as good day and date now. You have to look towards Twilight Princess HD for a better looking version of that game. Not that that makes either of them bad. I'm just saying if we're focusing on the graphics or how it looks, then you know what I'm saying is true. So I just don't think that sitting there and trying to nitpick that was a good idea, because the visual art style of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild will still look pretty good 10 years from now. And while you can say I'm wrong, but you know I'm right. Now, this is what I meant to add in at the beginning. I was just going to do a brief talk about the Street Fighter 6 demo because I never really got around to it. So I apologize for everybody that thought that was going to be the end once I stopped talking about David Jaffe. Now, just got to cover Street Fighter 6 demo real quick. I like it, actually. I'm not even gonna lie. I like it. I like it far better than what they did with Street Fighter 5. Now, my only nitpick that I would have for this is that when you start the game up, it automatically goes to the simplified play controls. It doesn't give you the option to go. It doesn't let you choose. It doesn't let you choose in the onset between the simplified play controls and the 6-button setup. Now, that may change with the full game, but just starting out, you get the simplified controls automatically with the light, medium, heavy attack and the special button. I don't like that play style because I'm used to the 6-button setup. I can play with the 3-button style. I just don't like it. So that's my only nitpick. That is literally the only nitpick I have with this game. Because I like the character designs. I mean, maybe outside of Ryu, I don't really care for Ryu's design. And I'm also not a fan that you have to start out, if you play the World Tour mode, you have to start out being an apprentice under Luke. I don't really care for that character. I mean, that's a whole personal thing myself, and his lazy ass dragon punch. That's a whole separate kettle of worms. But if the way they worked with Street Fighter 6 so far and working with it in the RE engine, they did what EA couldn't with Frostbite. They're making RE engine their base engine for everything, and they're doing a good job with it. So I applaud that. I mean, I'm actually looking forward to playing this game because of that demo. Now, I don't know when I'll end up with it because I'll probably wait a little bit and let them, roll out content. But I'm definitely interested in Street Fighter 6. It is far better looking than what Street Fighter 5 was, and it feels better to play than Street Fighter 5 does. If that demo is anything to go by, it feels much better to play than Street Fighter 5. Actually, I would say it feels better than Street Fighter 4. We're bridging the gap more toward how Street Fighter 3 felt. Just with a simplified control system being available for people, which again, I have no problem with the simplified controls being there. I just don't like that it's the default. At the start of the game, you should be given an explanation of what each control set is and allow you to choose which one you want to start with. That's about the only thing that I have as a nitpick for this. Like a major nitpick. The whole Luke thing is minor. And I do kind of wish that the World Tour demo that they gave you was a little bit longer. It's like you get like maximum, like if you're stretching it out, you get maximum, I think, like 12 fights. I have to go back in and try it again. But that's about my only real nitpick with it, is just like you don't get a whole. Now if you try to just go through it, I think you have like maybe 6. If you're just going through it straight through it and you don't try to extend your time in it in the demo, you get like 6 fights. But the World Tour mode is interesting. I want to see what that story turns into, because the character that is your rival character, I forget his name right now, he's actually pretty interesting, and I would like to see him as a part of the regular Street Fighter roster if he's going to be. I would actually like that character to be a part of the regular Street Fighter roster because he seems interesting. because it's a whole thing that I'm trying to figure out. But it still bugs me that they ain't put my boy Sean in there, or at least they haven't shown any plans to put him in there. So me and Capcom gonna have a discussion. But outside of that, yeah, I liked it. I think it was pretty good. I'm looking forward to the game coming out, which I think is next month, actually. So we'll see where that goes. Otherwise, I am pretty much done. Thank you guys very much for being patient and listening in. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me. And until the next time, please enjoy your games. Peace out, everybody.